2022. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Recording in progress.
Councilmember Tapia.
Present.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Here.
Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Councilmember Holloman.
Here.
Councilmember Littlewer.
Here.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. Everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America,
to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special city council meeting held December 29th, 2021, and the regular city council meeting held January 10th, 2022?
Mayor?
City manager? Yep.
Yes, we are recommending an amendment to the December 29th minutes on page 11. If we could just have the record reflect that Dino Demetrio is also a representative co-chair of the Downtown Property Owners Association.
Great. All right. Seeking a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia. Councilmember Stolberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
aye,
Councilmember Littlewer.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 7 ayes, no nays. The minutes are approved. May I have a motion to approve the warrant list?
So moved. Second.
Any comments, questions about the warrant list? Hearing none. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia. Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
aye,
Councilmember Littlewer.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 7 ayes, no nays. The warrant list is approved. Continuing on, the report of the mayor. I have no appointments this evening. I have no proclamations this evening. I do have other business. Last Monday, January 17th, the city's Human Relations Advisory Group and the Park District of Highland Park marked the 13th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service with a virtual live stream presentation, donation drop-off event at the Highland Park Country Club, and a wealth of virtual service projects and other activities. My council colleagues and I would like to extend special appreciation to all who participated in the event, especially keynote speaker Patrick Donkwa-John. Many thanks as well to the Human Relations Advisory Group and the Park District of Highland Park, and in particular, thank you to immediate past Chair Ellen Gustin, Day of Service Event Chair Terry Steinberg, Park District of Highland Park Vice President Terry Grossberg, Human Relations Advisory Group staff liaisons Laura Fry and Bill Bonaguidi, and AV Coordinator Vic Walter for their incredible work on this event. We also would like to thank the service providers who participated in the donation drop-off, including A Safe Place, Braeside School and Bernie's Book Bank, Families Helping Families Chicagoland, Gratitude Generation, the Highland Park Fire Department, the National Council of Jewish Women, the Rotary Club of Highland Park Highwood and Interact Club, Working Bikes and Trek Highland Park, and Zach Zoo. And if you were unable to participate in the event but would still like to make a donation to one of these organizations, please visit cityhpil.com/MLK to learn more about their needs. Thank you so much. And that is it for the report of the mayor. This next item is business from the public. This is for citizens wishing to be heard regarding items not listed on tonight's agenda. So if you're here to comment on an item that is on tonight's agenda, please wait until that item is brought up for discussion. Didn't know, Gita, if we've gotten any emails or anybody raising their hand to share their thoughts on an item not on tonight's agenda.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And just for everyone's information, we do list on the city's website information for how to participate in this meeting. So again, as the mayor indicated, there are a number of different ways for public participation. Individuals can email the city at cityhp@cityhpil.com. You can email an unlimited number of words if you'd just like to share communication with the mayor and city council. If you'd like to have anything read in the record as part of the formal record, we just ask that you limit the word count to 200 words or less, and we will read those items on the agenda. Or you can participate in this virtual meeting and we will call on you at that time. Mayor, so in response to your question, we have received one item for the Green Bay Road project on the agenda, a number of emails pertaining to the temporary order. And then we have Jean Sogan and Rafe Labrador who wish to make a short presentation. And again, we just ask if you could limit your comments to 2 minutes or less.
So 2 of those items, I believe, are on tonight's agenda.
Yeah,
So
we'll wait on those. Yeah, of course. I just wanted just for.
So is Jean Sogan here to talk about an item not on tonight's agenda?
Yes, they are. And she is with Rafe. And so you can. unmute.
Okay, so Jean and Rafe, if I could ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes, look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm Jean Sogan. I'm here with Ralph Labrador from the Parks Foundation, and we want to share some good news about access to Lake Michigan. As you know, the Park Avenue Beach has been needing attention for several years, and the Park District has a great plan for improving both the north area and the south area. But really, the first step towards that improvement is what the city, what you did a few years ago to improve the access. And I hope this isn't too little too late, but we want to thank the city for everything that you did about improving the roads down there. It's made a huge difference, thanks to the mayor, the city council, and the public works department. But going forward from here, the 2 keys to improving the South Beach area are first replacing the old barge breakwater, and second, recognizing that the breakwater is about more than boat launching. This is a picture of what's going to be coming. You can see the new breakwater. It's going to have space for benches. Then you can see next to it the boat launch for the power boaters. Next to that is where the sand ramp is going to be, and then further to the west is where the small boats launch. And that the new breakwater makes it possible to launch the power boats, makes it possible to launch from the sand, and it lets the small boats launch, and it protects the beach sand and the bluff from erosion. So it's doing, and it lets pedestrians and fishermen be there. It's doing an awful lot for everyone. But it's not cheap. The cost is going to be about $2.5 million. But the good news is that that's figured out. The Park District has applied for a $200,000 grant from the state, and they're asking for $300,000 in the community from donations, and they have refinanced a bond for the $2 million. And for the donations, that's where the Parks Foundation has come in, and that's what Ralph is going to tell you about.
So the good news is that the Power Boaters, the North Shore Yacht Club, and the Friends of Park Avenue Beach have teamed up with us, the nonprofit Parks Foundation of Highland Park, and have really achieved an incredible success in just a couple of short months. So thanks to the community members stepping up and to a leadership gift from an anonymous local philanthropist for $150,000 in matching funds, we're proud to announce that over 217 households have donated, and we're now going to reach that $300,000 goal by the end of this week. So it's an incredible testament to the support for the project and from this community for enhancing the great amenities, recreation amenities that we have in Highland Park. We hope to be able to make future announcements. The Parks Foundation is proud to partner with the community on funding other kinds of projects that are important to the community but are not yet funded through the Park District budget. And we look forward to coming back to you with future updates like this and working with the community in the future. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that presentation. Any questions for Jean or Ralph? Okay, well, thank you for joining us this evening. Much appreciated.
Thank you
all.
so much.
Okay, continuing on with our scheduled business. Geeta, is there anything else business from the public?
If there's anyone else that wishes to address the council, please raise your virtual hand. And Mayor, there is no one at City Hall other than staff, although the building is open, consistent with the Open Meetings Act.
Great, thank you. Okay, items 1 through 20 have been grouped together for omnibus consideration. I am seeking a motion to approve items 1 through 20. Councilmember Stone.
Can I pull number 18, please? And then I'm
Sure.
happy to make a motion to approve everything but 18.
Okay, so a motion to approve items 1 through 17, 19, 20. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions regarding items 1 through 17, 19, or 20? Any from the public? Okay, hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia. Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays. Items 1 through 17, 19, and 20 have been approved. Item 18, an ordinance amending the City of Highland Park zoning ordinance of 1997 as amended regarding retail fulfillment center uses.
Thanks. I had pulled this one because it seems that we are proposing a lot of parking be required for these facilities, and I don't know that that is really necessary. So I wanted to see if we could send this back to staff and have them come up with some alternatives and come back to us.
We can definitely do that. Absolutely.
Did you want to have Joel Fontaine provide any input? Does the council have any thoughts on Councilmember Stone's request? Councilmember Holloman.
Is there any urgency to approving this right now? Or is there something under consideration that it would be expedient to do this now versus later?
There's not a pending application. This was an initiative in an effort to be proactive and create an opportunity to proactively look for additional business investment in the community. That being said, there's no concern if we delay it to the next meeting, which is February 14th, and we'll provide the council with some options. The current parking regulations, which are set forth in the staff memorandum, were based on our current zoning regulations. And so that's how we derived the recommendation that's on the agenda this evening. We also surveyed 14 neighboring communities just to get a threshold of any regulations that they may have and we want to take a look at and consider. And nobody has similar action on their books. So we just used our current regulations as a guide for us. But no problem continuing it if that's what the council wishes to do.
Okay, Councilmember Littler, you had your hand up.
Yeah, with those assurances, I'm comfortable with holding off on this because I think it would be very informative. It's a very good presentation, and frankly, I really commend staff for taking the initiative along with the PDC. But I think that some of the alternatives are very interesting, so I'd really like to study them a little bit more in depth, and I think that we'll have that if staff would give us those in the presentation for next meeting. So thank you.
So Corporation Council, do we need a motion to postpone? What would be the appropriate step to take here?
You can, Mayor. There's no particular hearing or special notice was issued for this. You can take a motion to continue this item to the next meeting, or you can simply take no action. I would actually recommend a motion, given that this did come up through a zoning public hearing.
Okay, so we're seeking a motion to continue this item to a date uncertain.
I would make that motion, but do we want to continue it just till the next meeting? It sounded like staff would be ready for that.
We'll be ready on the 14th.
Okay,
I'd second that.
okay. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia. Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littler.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays. Item 18 will be continued to our next meeting. Thank you. Continuing on, other business. Item 21 is consideration of a motion to extend the emergency declaration for the City of Highland Park through the end of the next City Council meeting on February 14, 2022. Do I have a motion on this item?
So moved.
Go ahead. Thank you. Happy to entertain comments or questions from the council before we open it to the public. And I do want to assure the public that we have received your emails. We may not have had the opportunity to respond, but rest assured that they have all been reviewed. Councilmember Tapia.
Yeah, I'd like to make a statement. First of all, to reiterate my statement from last month, I am a firm believer in COVID vaccinations and boosters. I believe in the need for masks and social distance indoors. I also believe we must care for the welfare of our city by finding ways to triage, the best way to triage across public health, business health, and community social health. When our context was there for being no vaccines, and there was a slow rollout of those vaccines, and therefore we were threats to one another to passing on a virus that could lead to serious illness or death, we had to make public health safety the #1 priority. But now with 85% of Highland Park vaccinated And with the exception of those who cannot get vaccinated due to autoimmune vulnerabilities, religious beliefs, or their age, and then with the rest having made willful choice not to get a vaccine, we must think about the choices in front of us in a different way because the risks have changed. Here's the risk that has changed. While those who are vaccinated can still get a breakthrough case of COVID, it's proven that the chances of them ending up in the ICU or dying are significantly low. We know this because over 90% of those landing in the ICU are those who are unvaccinated. As a business leader, in looking at the many dilemmas that we face as leaders, for me, it all starts with the question, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Followed by, of the many ideas to be considered, which ones will have the best chance of solving it? And then we must ask, what are the unintended consequences that may take place on other issues that were not intended to be addressed? In terms of the key question, the problem we would like to solve is that we would like the epidemic reduced to endemic levels. And we clearly want people not to end up in the ICU or dying. This, of course, is a vitally important problem to solve. But I'm not convinced that asking for proof of vaccination to do indoor dining in Highland Park's restaurants will help achieve this goal. And in terms of unintended consequences, this is threatening our restaurants' viability. Just listen to their stories and their pleas. While it's proven that vaccines go a long way in reducing the chance of death or even a very serious illness, it's clear that vaccines and boosters are not enough to stop the spread. The science shows that 79% of cases of Omicron is with people who have been vaxxed already, and vaxxed people can still be symptomatically or asymptomatic carriers of the virus. This means that we can be in a restaurant with all who have proven they have gotten vaccine, and yet we can still get it. The good news for those who are vaccinated is that their symptoms, if they do get it, will be less grave. What protects them from the serious illness is their vaccine status and not the vaccine status of those around them. In other words, the Omicron variant is so contagious and so widespread that by the time this wave is over, in the words of the US government's top health officials, just about everyone is going to get it. People are contracting Omicron from everywhere, even when protocols have been strict. Weddings, funerals, having kids come back from college, sports events, gyms, going to the grocery store. Yes, we are concerned about restaurants where masks are removed. Yet with Omicron infecting us from all sides, the vaccination proof requirement to eat at a restaurant is targeting a very small percentage of where people spend their time, and therefore it's not going to do much in meeting the objective of reducing the spread. Further, in Lake County, we're the only community doing this, which is like then putting a finger in the dike in trying to make a difference. And in the meantime, our restaurants are losing customers to our neighboring communities. And as I wrap up here, I also worry about the long-term effect that even once this ordinance is lifted, as it will eventually, businesses and patrons from outside Highland Park, which we also need for our restaurants to be viable, will have second thoughts about doing business here. Further, I worry about the emotional health of our community and the polarization a vax mandate is causing that is a detriment to all of us. This is a time that requires greater social cohesion rather than division. So these are my reasons for voting no. And one final plea, even so, if this ordinance gets renewed tonight, one appeal to those who live here, love our restaurants, and are against this ordinance. Please don't punish our restaurants for this, as it's out of their hands. Think about ordering out for them. They need you.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Well, I'd like to start out at the end of that remark and say I resent suggesting that a vote in favor of this vaccine mandate being extended is a punishment to restaurants. There isn't a person on this city council who views this as a punishment. If we vote in favor of it, it's viewed as a health and medical necessity. So I want to start with that. Secondly, there is no question that vaccinations are not as effective as they used to be. However, there is no study that says that they are ineffective, and all studies acknowledge that vaccinations do provide some effectiveness in conjunction with masking and social distancing in helping to reduce the spread of this disease. Unfortunately, in a restaurant, masking fully and during the entire time one is inside and practicing social distancing can't be done. That's the uniqueness of this environment. The study from UC Davis that was cited to me in several letters recommends vaccinations, despite its acknowledgement about disease loading levels. It acknowledges that although vaccinated people with a breakthrough infection are much less likely to become severely ill than unvaccinated, the new study shows that they can be carrying amounts of a virus and could potentially spread the virus to other people, but the study did not directly address how easily vaccinated people can get infected. So the argument that somehow vaccination is useless or unimportant is incorrect. I would also like to share a personal observation, which is that I recently had to have care at the Highland Park Kellogg Cancer Center. I had to have a relatively simple procedure that should have taken about 15 minutes. It was an infusion. However, I was advised that although the materials for that infusion and the ability generally to do that infusion exists at our cancer center here in Highland Park, because of the number of healthcare workers that are absent with COVID, I would have to travel to Niles in order to have that procedure. The fact of the matter is, COVID is still causing occupation of hospital beds and an increased number of deaths among unvaccinated people in a disproportionate level to the vaccinated. And if we can keep unvaccinated people from coming into contact with our population, then this is an appropriate method to do that. And that's why I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in here and share just a couple of thoughts before we continue with the conversation. And I just want to be very, very clear. This is not a vaccine mandate. This is a temporary requirement to show proof of vaccination to enter restaurants in the city, which is absolutely consistent with our neighbors in Cook County. And it was done because masks are removed while eating in establishments that require masks. So we need to continue doing what we can to try to mitigate the risk of exposure. Residents are perfectly welcome to make their own choices about vaccination, but we know that as a public body, we have to stand on the side of public safety and public health and make decisions that protect the public and mitigate the pandemic's impact on our region's overburdened healthcare system, and I might add, on our region's local economy. We've received many emails and communications from individuals outside of our community objecting to our proof of vaccination requirement. And of course, we respect the First Amendment and the right to speak out. But our first obligation is to our residents and to their safety and to those who work within our local economy. We know that our residents are among the most vaccinated in Lake County. I believe close to 95% have at least one dose of the vaccine. And we know that our residents value vaccination as the best way to protect the most vulnerable and those who aren't as vulnerable, but to eventually end this pandemic. On the day that the vaccine proof requirement was implemented, we had a 7-day rolling average of cases of 160 per day, which is an all-time high, far exceeding the earlier 7-day average of 56 in November 2020. We are still in a massive surge in cases, unlike any we have ever seen before. And if you don't believe me, go to the Illinois Public Health Department website where they track. We are in Region 9, we are in Lake County, and though the trends are going in a somewhat better direction, today's data would say that they're not at all showing any kind of end of the peak. The actions we took to protect our community, we also took to help ensure the economic viability of our community. And this requirement to show proof of vaccination, I have to say, isn't what's taking any kind of economic toll. It is the coronavirus. Let me restate that. We're in a battle against a virus. We're not in a battle against each other. We're not in a battle to show I care more about, this than you do. That's nonsense. We are all in a battle against a very deadly virus. It is still surging. Ignoring the reality of this pandemic is not going to solve the problem. And so for those of you who argue this is an issue of freedom, absolutely. We agree. You are free to make the choice that makes sense for you and for your family. And obviously, all choices have consequences. You need to weigh those risks. Councilmember Tapia, you already went through, and Councilmember Bloomberg, what the impacts are of vaccines. And those who have chosen not to be vaccinated, that's your choice. Fine, so be it. But we have to look out for those with underlying health conditions, which make them more susceptible to the virus, even if they are fully vaccinated. I want to state again, for those of you who maybe are new, we as a city have been working to strike a balance of supporting our local restaurants and businesses while protecting health. We've worked from day one of this pandemic to support our local businesses. We've given them grants to cover pandemic-related costs. We've eliminated permit fees. We've provided access to public right-of-ways for outdoor dining. We remain open to ideas. We remain engaged with our business community and restaurants. We are working with them to find solutions and to help ensure their continued success during this difficult period. And so we hope that if you're vaccinated, you'll enjoy dining in Highland Park. And I'm going to call on each and every one of us on this call to do our part to shop and to dine locally and to support our local businesses. And if you're not, then I hope you'll take advantage of the broad range of delivery and carryout options that are available. But I do want to state, I have heard from a lot of Highland Park residents and recently a lot of people outside of Highland Park thanking us for doing this, thanking us for taking these extra steps, thanking us for trying to do our best to mitigate this surge and giving people some peace of mind that somebody is following established principles of public health. And on a final note, and I really, really want everybody to listen carefully to this final note, to those of us who have written to share your thoughts and your feelings on this difficult topic, keep in mind, your words matter. Everything sent to anybody on this council and the city of Highland Park is a matter of public record. The language you're using, if you're making accusations, if you're using tone that is inappropriate, and I'm thinking of a few of you right now, I want you to recognize we, the people on this call, serve the community, and we put a lot of time and a lot of energy into meeting the needs of our residents every single day, regardless of the topic, not just this. So we may not agree, but we are doing it with the best of intentions, and we are doing it in an effort to treat people with respect, and we hope you will do the same for us. Thank you for listening. Councilmember Stone.
Thank you. And thank you for detailing all that we have done to help our businesses and our restaurants through the pandemic. I think it's really important to recognize that. I have heard from many Highland Park residents who favor the vaccine card requirement. They're concerned about the violent rhetoric around this issue. And as you mentioned, people are just not being civil to each other. And they have not written to the council because of that concern. The common themes that I've heard are that they have been able to dine out in Highland Park because of this requirement. They said that checking vaccine cards has been a non-event at the restaurants, and they believe that we should do what's in the best interests of public health. I also heard today from Gita, who provided us, the city manager, the information that there are 137 establishments that serve food in Highland Park. And of those 137, we have heard 16 who have expressed concern, which is, just a little bit over 10%. So to me, this is not rocket science. This is being done elsewhere. This is something that will help the public health. And I'm in favor of continuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Holloman.
Yeah, I just wanted to stand in support of what the mayor said. I appreciate that greatly. I think you articulated just about everything that I would say. I would also add to that when I did dine out on at least 3 occasions this weekend, the restaurants were full and there was no problem with showing a vaccine proof. They were being checked, and it was a simple and straightforward process, one which I believe supports our public health, and hopefully all of us will get out and support our restaurants and feel safe in doing so. So thank you for your comments, Mayor. I appreciate that, and I will be supporting the extension of the emergency order this evening.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of the council? Councilmember Lidor.
Actually, I think I'll defer the floor to Councilmember Stolberg because I'd like to hear his comments before I speak.
Okay, Councilmember Stolberg. You need to unmute to be heard.
Sorry, I thought it was unmuted. Thank you, Mayor. I'm trying not to be repetitive to what my colleagues have said, including what Councilmember Tapia said in his support of removing the mandate. I too have fought very hard on this, and if you look at what we do as a city public safety is our core priority. And, there was a part of me that as we examined our actions from the last couple of weeks said, are we in continuing this? Is mission accomplished? Or do we need to continue this because we're not quite there? I went over the last 5 days to 17 different restaurants in both Highland Park, Deerfield, Lake County, Deerfield, Cook County, Northbrook, Cook County, Highwood, and Rosemont, of all places. I understand people's frustrations. I was at the event on Sunday in Port Clinton, and unfortunately, the message of public health has gotten commingled with the issue of it's my right to protect my medical information and not provide a vax card. I am not judging anybody whether they choose to get vaccinated or not. Their health, their decisions are their right. They're their responsibility, their right of themselves and their families. I will tell you that in one of the restaurants I went to, it took longer to process my credit card than it did to ask for my vax card. Okay? My children went to a Bulls game. They were required to submit their vax card or they were not permitted entry. Unfortunately, this is the way of the world at this moment. And I heard somebody say that we are the only county, the only city in Lake County that is requiring this. And I don't view that as a negative. Highland Park has always been a leader. I am proud that we take actions not based on what our neighbors do, but what the 7 of us and our staff and our consciences tell us what's right. There is no bigger supporter. You can ask my wife because she doesn't cook often. There is no bigger supporter of the downtown restaurants than me and my 3 children and my wife. And I was very bothered, while everybody has a right to their freedom of speech and their opinion, to get some of these emails that said, I've frequented these restaurants for 15 or 20 years, and because of your mandate, we'll never step back in there again. And I will say the same thing that some of my colleagues have said. Please don't punish our restaurants for the actions that we've taken here tonight. We are truly trying to vote our conscience. We are truly trying to do what's right. And if you truly are in support of those restaurants, the fact that you don't want to show a vax card and cannot physically dine there doesn't mean that you can't support them by buying gift cards, by taking carryout or delivery. And I will tell you, I was at a lot of restaurants that were empty, vax card or no vax card, in different communities. And I was at a lot of restaurants that were absolutely jam-packed with vax requirements. Thank you. May I see your vax card when you come in? It's on your phone. It's in a laminated pouch, whatever it is, and you just provide it. So I am not in favor of taking an action and abandoning it before we've accomplished our goal. I've thought very hard on this. I am not looking to put anybody in our community out of business or create anything harder than this virus for the last 2 years has already imposed upon us. I look at this as a very, very short-term way to ensure long-term success, and I will absolutely be supporting this tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Rotary, may I speak now? Mayor Rotary?
I think she's frozen.
All right, well, then I'm going to go ahead at this point too. First of all, I want to thank my colleagues and the mayor truly for the leadership and the character that you have all shown. I would have to say that in December, when we considered this resolution, I thought this was absolutely imperative. We were in an emergency situation, and that's not to say we are totally out of the water by any stretch of the imagination. But in many ways, I really would like to echo what all of you have said, because I know the care and concern that you are all putting into this and how difficult this decision has been for all of us. Without getting into the numbers of how many restaurateurs have called and said, this is really hurting us, without getting into all the emails that we have received. And I assure people in the audience and people in the public that we read every one of them. And we have received a lot in support of this mandate, and we have received a lot that have not been in support of this mandate. I do think that people are convoluting several issues, and it's very, very bothersome. Because in a world that has had so much pain over the last 2 years over a disease that no one can control, it's horrible that we point fingers at one another to make it worse. Our priority in December when we enacted this was to do whatever we can as elected officials to protect our communities, our businesses, our residents, and those who come to visit us in this community. And I stand by that vote completely. I think it was the right thing to do. And while the numbers have gotten slightly better, and while many people have said we've peaked, I do think we are improving. The thing that bothers me with all of this is both the rhetoric that I've heard, which frankly pushes me in another direction altogether, having attended yesterday's rally and having had people called names who I know only care about one another's health in their community. It's just not right, and it's not appropriate. There is no place for this. There is a reason that there is a limit on free speech, because name calling and violating other people's practices is not appropriate. However, I do not judge anyone whether they want to get vaccinated or not. That's their private business. But I will say that there needs to be a nexus. And what I have seen over the last few weeks and moving forward now has been that the nexus between not having a card shown at a restaurant in Highland Park does not, I don't see the difference in the numbers. And because of that, this was an emergency measure. I believe our numbers are getting better. I believe our businesses are taking the brunt of this through no desire by anyone on this council, and hopefully not by people in our community. But I think when they put those issues together and they punish our businesses, please recognize you're not helping the situation. If you don't want to go to a restaurant, don't go to that restaurant. If you don't want to show a vaccine card, that's your prerogative. But to take it out on our businesses and our residents is just not fair. And they're struggling and they're hurting. And frankly, I just don't see how at this point that we are at right now, that nexus is there. And because of that, I am not going to vote to renew tonight. I'm hoping this is the right decision. I know which way the vote is going to go, and I respect my colleagues on it. But frankly, I think that the nexus and the reason for me having an emergency order has actually passed. That doesn't go to the number of beds in ICU, but it does say that our population is vaccinated. Our population is following the mask mandate, and our businesses are hurting. And on par at this point, that becomes my emergency. And that's why I'm changing my vote. It has nothing to do with the ugly protests that I've seen and some of the ugly emails I have received. I stand by my earlier position, but at this point, I don't see the point and the nexus in renewing. I also look very forward to hearing other comments in addition to those that will be read into the record tonight before we formulate our positions. And I want people to know that when we have made decisions in the past, for those of you who seem to think that everything was decided beforehand, that's not the case. We read everything, we listen to everything. And frankly, if I were to go the other way tonight because some information that someone put forward to me, that would only be because we do take these comments into account. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Litterwer. Mayor Rotering is logging off and she's going to log right back in. I would just ask at this time, are there any other comments by our elected officials? Okay. We received a number of comments consistent with our policy for stating questions, comments, feedback for the record. So at this time, I am going to read those. These are comments that we've received from members of the public. And we ask that individuals limit their written comments to 200 words or less, and then we will read those into the comments. And then again, just to reiterate, we have received a very large number of emails and communication from residents as well as non-residents. If you email the city at cityhp@cityhpil.com, that communication was forwarded and shared with the mayor and city council. And then these are emails as well that we will formally read into the record at this time. So the first one is from Leah Arbor, Highland Park resident, noted Highland Park resident for over 20 years. Why are you supporting unconstitutional mandates, breaking HIPAA, destroying businesses? Vaccines do not prevent illness or transmission. There is no reason for your actions. Your duty is to help us. Next communication is from Michelle Bernstein, a Deerfield resident. She writes, I support the owners and employees that stand against the vaccine mandate. Consider their feedback, unlike what occurred after your last meeting. Look outside your bubble and mirror the rest of the country. There is no data that shows COVID spreads in restaurants. There is no logic when HP residents are literally going in and out of Highwood 2 blocks away where there's no mandate. Mandates don't work and only offer a false sense of security. Everyone, vaxxed or not, is getting COVID and spreading COVID. Not to mention, not every owner and patron is complying. People have no idea who is sitting next to them. People at high risk or terrified of COVID are still avoiding restaurants. People who support vaccines but don't support mandates are also avoiding restaurants with mandates. So there are very few left supporting the HP restaurants. This mandate isn't about anything other than optics and virtual signaling. The hypocrisy is clear when your own city council member Stolberg was just in Mexico with 0 mandates, yet wants to enforce them in his own town. Your job is to make sure HP thrives, the resident can take care of their own health, be better. Next email is from Rebecca Kurtz, Highland Park resident. Shocking to me is writing to the highly esteemed Highland Park City Council about medical freedoms. Quote, show me your papers, unquote, is the last phrase I expected to be mandated in this city. Our own businesses are suffering. There's no science to support this mandate. I employ you to do your research and stop the overreach beyond the laws of HIPAA and personal privacy in hope of better outcomes. Next communication is from Carrie Gutstein, a Lincolnwood resident. While I am not a resident of Highland Park, I've spent plenty of time and money shopping and dining in your village. Asking people to show private medical information in order to do so is un-American. This violates our privacy and is not shown to make difference in terms of public health. Back in 2009, we experienced a massive outbreak of swine flu. Schools were closed, hospitals became overwhelmed, and 80% of deaths occurred in people under 65. A vaccine was developed, and yet swine flu became endemic in the population. No one was required to show proof of having that vaccine in order to move about freely. No one wore masks out in public either. Coronavirus is here to stay and we need to live with it. It's time to open the country just like Britain, Ireland, Denmark, and Czech Republic and France have done. People who have been vaccinated are spreading the virus and getting sick too. At this point, most people who want to be vaccinated already have been, and the remainder will never be convinced to take shots or have natural immunity. Hitting them with punitive measures will only ruin your small businesses. Next is from Paul Guggenheim, Highland Park resident. I'm a lifelong resident of Highland Park. Vaccine mandates have been ruled unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court for large businesses. What makes Highland Park think it should require proof of vaccination for restaurant patrons? HIPAA laws protect individuals from being forced to reveal their medical information. Even if it was ruled legal, there are several reasons why this mandate is morally wrong. The survival rate of COVID-19 is 99.9% for most age groups. Recent studies found that natural immunity offers considerably better protection than does 2 vaccine doses. A new study from UC Davis shows no significant difference in viral load between vaccinated and unvaccinated people who tested positive for the Delta variant of SARS-CoV-2. With crime rising, police should not focus their efforts on enforcing this mandate. This hurts local businesses where many patrons will shop elsewhere. Showing proof of vaccination is a slippery slope to even more government intrusion in our lives and sets a dangerous precedent to further erode our precious freedoms. This is from Lily. I live in Highland Park and I'm 13 years old. We moved here in September 2020. I've loved going into town with all my friends after school, but if I can't because I'm unvaccinated, that's excluding me from all my friends. Also, I feel that kids have become too involved with politics and quote, who's vaccinated, who's unvaccinated. I just want to have a normal childhood and I want to have a choice for what goes in my body. I also want people to respect that choice and for no one to be left out. At your meeting today, please remove this mandate for me and for all the kids in Highland Park so we can go back to enjoying our town. Next communication is from William Doms, Highland Park resident. When our family was searching for a diverse and inclusive community to relocate to in 2020, Highland Park was at the top of our list. We feel blessed to live in a city that compassionately welcomes people of diverse ethnicities, religions, and socioeconomic statuses. However, we were taken aback on December 29th, 2021, when the Highland Park City Council hastily implemented a discriminatory vaccine mandate targeting our restaurants. The results, because of this mandate, those with religious objections to these types of vaccines can no longer dine out in our community. Because of this Because of this mandate, those with legitimate medical barriers to this vaccine can no longer dine out in our community. Because of this mandate, minor children whose parents choose not to vaccinate for personal or medical reasons can no longer dine out in our community. This no longer sounds like to open-hearted community we moved to in 2020. This mandate has indeed changed Highland Park. We are no longer a city that welcomes and serves all people. Martin Luther King Jr. said it best, quote, "A right delayed is a right denied." Remove this discriminatory mandate immediately and return the right for all people to support our local restaurants. Next communication is from Alan Weintraub, former resident Highland Park. I lived in Highland Park for over 35 years and have frequented restaurants and shops in Highland Park regularly. With the new mandate on vaccination, I refuse to go to Highland Park for anything. This not only hurts the restaurants, but all the shop owners that used to get my business. Sunset Foods used to be my go-to place for groceries when my wife and I dined out, but that has now changed. Yes, I have been vaccinated and boosted based on my choices, not yours. My status is none of your business. I am healthy, taking the health of those around me seriously, but will not allow Highland Park to mandate my vax as permission to do business in this lovely place. I encourage to follow the law, but not make your own at the cost of losing valued customers like me. For the record, I've always had my children out to dinner with me, so the loss to Highland Park becomes more significant as the number of diners increases. Recall this vax mandate for restaurants. From Amy Scruggs, Highland Park resident, I strongly oppose the extension of the city's special order requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccination for patrons of on-premise dining establishments. I strongly oppose any city order requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccination for patrons of any type of business. I am in favor of a business requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccination for patrons should they choose to do so. From Dr. A. Arbor, Highland Park resident since 1998. After 2 years, we the people, owner and patrons could decide who and where should go. Why is Highland Park the only place in Lake County dictating to its citizen how they have to protect themselves? From Giovanna Bursack, Highland Park resident. This data was pulled directly from the following two sources. And then she cites a website, Department of Public Health in Lake County. The only additional calculations were to the 7-day difference between January 12th and January 19. The date of January 12 was used as it appeared to be peak for the county and the below mentioned towns. Below, you'll see vaccination and case rate data for Lake County and surrounding communities. Highland Park is the only community in Lake County with the proof of vaccine requirement for restaurants. Both Highland Park and Lincolnshire have some of the highest vaccination rates in the county and yet have very high case rates in comparison to the other communities who also have thriving restaurant scenes which don't require proof of vaccination. With the proof of vaccination order in place for 2 weeks already, I would have expected to see a sharper decline in case rates for Highland Park, but somehow Libertyville, whose vaccination rate is about 10% below Highland Park's and does not have a proof of vaccine order in place, somehow had a decrease of 40% in their case rates from 112.22 to 119.22, 6% more than Highland Park. Highland Park's case rates are still significantly higher than the whole of Lake County. The below towns are all following a similar curve of decline in case rates, regardless of proof of vaccination requirements. I would like this information submitted as proof that your arbitrary orders are not making a difference in community spread and the order rescinded. The only thing you've done is furthering the divide of the community and segregating tax-paying citizens, many of whom have already received natural immunity from COVID. And then she cites a CDC article. And then just two more. This is from Dina Listener. I speak to you as a friend and lifelong resident of Highland Park and managing broker of Baird & Warner HP, which is a proud member of the Highland Park community, as are many of our agents. I have grave concerns for what this vaccine card requirement is doing to our community. When homeowners move to an area, they look for a bright, vibrant downtown community with shopping, restaurants, diversity, and entertainment. They want to feel a part of the area and often choose a location based on proximity to town. Unfortunately, Highland Park is suffering a very large business vacancy rate. While our restaurants suffer, businesses also suffer. Our neighbors, Highwood and Lake Forest, continue to thrive, possibly more so with all those who can no longer enjoy the experience of dining in Highland Park. Limiting restaurants to those who are vaccinated discourages the inclusion and vibrancy our city strives for. Sadly, vaccinated and unvaccinated people spread COVID-19 with the same transmission rate, which means, unfortunately, this order serves to harm our community, further divide families and friends. 35% of the population cannot dine in HP and discriminates against nearly half of our minority population. And then the last one is from Suzanne Wall. She writes, since 12/29/21, I've repeatedly asked the city to furnish actual data on COVID transmission in Highland Park restaurants that would, 1, support enacting the proof of vaccine mandate, and 2, effectively measure results to determine your end game. Guess what? You don't have any data to support, measure, or end this mandate. Here's what you have. Mayor Rodering's quote on ABC 7 News, January 23rd, quote, people are taking their masks off, potentially spreading the virus. That's your data. So here's my data. On Saturday, January 15, we canvassed over 15 downtown Highland Park restaurants. 90% of surveyed restaurants had 0 customers in their dining rooms. She attached photos. 100% of surveyed restaurants were both horrified at their lost business and terrified the city of Highland Park would fine them if they engaged in noncompliance. 45% commercial vacancy rate in downtown Highland Park, 0 other cities outside Cook County with a vaccine mandate. Why didn't you simply mirror what the city of Deerfield did? They surveyed their restaurants to determine if a vaccine mandate was viable. Guess what? No mandate in Deerfield. So back to Highland Park's mandate. It's ineffective, unmeasurable, and is crushing our town. End it now. And Mayor, that concludes all the written comments that we've received from members of the public.
Thank you. And my apologies for the chaos with my technology challenges while you were reading through all of that. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the input. At this point, we will be opening to public comment. I do want to say at the outset that we appreciate the public's interest in this topic. We are here to hear you. But we are also asking that you keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Stay on the topic. And if others have already said what you wish to say, at some point, I may just ask folks to raise hands to say, who else is here to agree with that statement, just for the sake of being respectful of everybody's time. We do have 2 other matters on tonight's agenda. If somebody has submitted a written comment, they also are able to talk unless they're repeating themselves. And if your comment has already been read into the record, there's no reason for you to reiterate what's already been read. So again, thank you for respecting everybody's time, and we look forward to hearing from the public. Geeta, I'm going to let you handle who is speaking and also keeping track of the 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so the first name is Suzanne. And again, 2 minutes or less, please.
You got it.
And I'm so sorry. Before we continue, I'd like to ask that the people who are speaking, please state whether or not you're a Highland Park resident. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Geeta, thank you for reading those letters. My name is Suzanne. I'm a Highland Park resident. And I'm also here with my daughter who would like to speak in the next 2 minutes, if that's possible.
Sure.
So Geeta, you just very eloquently and correctly read 13 letters. And thank you so much for doing that against the mandate. And Councilman Tapia and Councilwoman Littlewar, thank you so much for being in tune with your residents. The rest of you, shame on you. Councilman Stolberg, I want to talk to you. You say that your wife doesn't cook a lot, right? You like to eat out. It's interesting how she posted Facebook photos out at Greenwood and Highwood. She doesn't support our restaurants. You guys say you're engaged with your community and the restaurants. You're not. My family, including my 13-year-old daughter sitting right here next to me, we canvassed downtown last Saturday, the 15th. And guess what we found? Geeta Nukridge correctly said, I sent her photos. I'd love for her to share her screen if that's a possibility. Is that a possibility, City Manager Nukridge?
No, Suzanne, the City Council did receive your email with the attachment.
I want to make sure, why don't you all, while you're sitting there, open the attachment I sent?
Mayor, isn't
Why
the
don't you
speaker
open
somebody
it?
who's already been read
So-
into the record?
Yes, you have already read, your comments have been read. into
Right,
the-
I'm not going to say what I actually said. So when I,
Actually, I'm going to interrupt you for one more minute, and that doesn't count against your time. I'm
Good.
going to respectfully ask that you not make this personal about attacking individual members of this council and speak directly to whether you support or oppose the vaccine, proof of vaccine
course.
requirement. Thank you.
we vehemently oppose this government overreach, and I can't believe how tone deaf you all are. When I actually canvassed the restaurants with my family, again, my 13-year-old daughter is sitting right here. Almost every restaurant owner, we were at over 15 restaurants. We would have done more, but they wanted to talk to us. They said, why haven't we seen anyone from the city? Why isn't the mayor here doing what you're doing, asking us how we feel? I did this as a private citizen.
Okay.
Why
thank
aren't you doing that? Listen to your residents.
I'm sorry. With all due
Listen
respect,
to us.
with all due respect, I did reach out to several restaurants in advance of our consideration of this requirement. So I'm not sure who you spoke to, but I reached out to several of them, and thank you for your comments this evening. We now would love to hear from your daughter, Lily.
She's right here. Thank you. Go ahead, Lily.
Hi. I just want to say, I'm kind of upset that how my decisions on not putting stuff in my body are not really being respected. And I really would like to go downtown with my friends a lot of days. And they want to go to awesome places with really yummy food, but I can't because I'm unvaccinated. And I also, sometimes I won't like my friends to know if I'm vaccinated or not, because some kids, like, they don't like unvaccinated people. And yeah, I just want to say that I would like this mandate to be lifted because I would like to start going into town with my friends and for my decisions to be respected. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily, and thank you for your advocacy, and we appreciate you joining us this evening, and it's our hope that this will be a temporary thing that will be over and behind us soon enough. But thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciated hearing from you. Gita, who's our next speaker?
Next speaker, Dino Demetrio.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'll be very quick because I know that there's probably a lot of people that want to speak. And I'll just reiterate what I said at the last emergency meeting. As the co-chair of the Property Owners Association, we had a unanimous vote to ask the city to follow the state mandates and not to go past that. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Dino. Appreciate you
very
joining
much.
us. Thank you.
all for what you're doing.
Gita, who's our next speaker?
The next speaker is Andrew Eichner.
Welcome.
Welcome. How are you? I am shocked at what I've been hearing. I would like to speak on behalf of the people who support the vaccine mandate 1,000%. I've been a Highland Park resident since 1968. I know hundreds of people in Highland Park, having lived here 50 years, and I don't know one of them that objects in any way, shape, or form to the vaccine mandate, and who welcome it, in fact, and who would not go to restaurants if there wasn't a vaccine mandate. In fact, it would diminish the customer base, particularly since, as everybody said here, 85 to 90% of Highland Park is vaccinated. And I guarantee you that the restaurants, particularly those in the city part of Highland Park, are frequented by 85 or 90% of people in Highland Park. So I don't know who's really objecting to this except people from outside of Highland Park. And I don't want a vaccine mandate to be lifted so that people from outside of Highland Park can come here or unvaccinated and sit next to me at a table without a mask. It just doesn't make any sense. And I think that my personal political feelings are that some of the people who are anti the mandate are politically motivated by others. But clearly, this is Highland Park will lose business if the restaurants don't have a mandate, because people who are vaccinated, which are 85 to 90% of the people in Highland Park, want to go to those, want that mandate in place. And I've been to a number of restaurants in Highland Park since the mandate's been in place, and not one owner has complained. There has been not one hiccup, not one iota of a problem between anybody going there or not. This is a manufactured problem by people who want to manufacture this problem. It's like complaining about something that doesn't exist. I think our businesses, the question is, in Winnetka, I went to Winnetka at least a couple of weeks ago had a vaccine mandate for the restaurant. And we drove up and down the main part of Winnetka, and all the restaurants weren't that busy. Then we went to the best restaurant in Winnetka, and it was packed with the vaccine mandate. So a good restaurant with a vaccine mandate is going to get more people than a vaccine mandated restaurant that isn't that good. And the quality of certain of Highland Park restaurants versus Highwood is another issue. And whether they were doing great or not prior to the mandate is another issue.
I want to thank you for your time. It has been 2 minutes.
Okay.
Appreciate
All
your
right.
feedback.
Thank you. But I'm for it. And I know a lot of people who are for it and who would not frequent the restaurants but for the mandate currently. Hundreds.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Our next speaker.
Dana Listener.
Dina.
Thanks, Adam.
You're welcome, Dina. How are you?
Good. Good to see everybody's faces. Thank you for giving me a moment to speak. I did write a letter, and I couldn't fit everything in 200 words or less. I really worked on it, as you probably heard. I just have a couple things to say. I do know that some of the restaurants around here, and especially in Highland Park, having grown up here, I've lived here for 47, almost 48 years, plus I guess a year in Chicago and Deerfield. I think cancel culture is a very real thing in Highland Park. And I know I've seen some restaurants speak out or, maybe do some things that weren't in line with the mandates, and they get bashed terribly online. I mean, I'm embarrassed for the way that some of our residents behave, as you guys were mentioning. And so I do think that there are restaurants and restaurant owners that are not in favor of this, but they're afraid to speak out. They're afraid to say anything because they don't want to be canceled. The other thing I just want to say is, I understand the idea of a vaccine, right? I've vaccinated myself, my kids, our whole lives. I'm not saying I don't believe in vaccines, but I also know that the transmission rate is the same, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, whether you're sitting at a table, standing up, whatever it is, it doesn't really make a difference where you stand or sit. So to me, I understand you feel more comfortable with the mask mandate. That makes a little more sense to me, I guess. But the vaccine mandate, if it's transferable regardless of whether you're vaccinated or not, I don't understand the purpose of the mandate for the vaccine. It's not like everybody who, like Councilman Tapia said, it's not like everybody who's sitting in that restaurant is not going to have COVID, right? They could, even if everybody's vaccinated, we all could still have COVID. So I just wanted to make that point. Please keep in mind that there is a lot of fear out there from the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, and from the people who believe in the mandates and the people who don't. And so I think it's just it's an unusual time for all of us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Ladies.
At this time, if there's anyone else that wishes to address the council, please raise your virtual hand. Okay.
Councilmember Stone, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, just really quickly, I want to share 2 things just to counter a couple of things that have been said. One of the speakers counted the number of letters that the city manager read. And I just want to mention that there were plenty of other letters, but the only ones that got read were the ones that explicitly stated that they wanted to be read. So we heard from people who were in favor of this mandate. We heard from people who were opposed to the requirement. And the 13 letters that were read, or however many it was, really is immaterial because that was not the bulk of the input that we received. So I just I wanted to make sure that that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments from the city council before we move ahead and take action?
Can we call the question, Mayor?
I have a question, actually,
Yes, Councilmember Lidor.
for the city manager. Councilmember Stone was quoting the number of establishments, restaurants that had not objected. And I just don't think that number was right. And so I just wanted to clarify that, please, because I thought 16 had objected out of 32, or was that 16 out of all the establishments? I just want to be really clear that we represent their views correctly, because that does not jive numerically with the phone calls that I received today.
Yeah, I'll let Rita clarify because that was from her numbers.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure I've got it right.
Yeah, I'm pleased to. So we provided information about the temporary local order community-wide. We sent it to the e-news, social media, a media release. We did an extensive amount of communication to let the public know about this temporary order. We sent direct information to 137 businesses that offer on-premise food and beverage service. And then the breakdown of those, there are 32 full-service restaurants. I'll just give the kind of the top. So 32 full-service restaurants. There are 60 limited service snack shops, 12 country clubs or like yacht clubs, 7 grocery stores, health food stores, and so on. And so we held 2 virtual meetings for these businesses to answer questions and also to obtain their feedback. There were 16 businesses that expressed concern with the mandate. So it's the 16 out of, there's a total 137, but 32 full service restaurants.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, we have a second, we've heard comments. I'd like the clerk to call the vote.
Councilmember Tapia?
Yeah, I just want to encourage everybody, regardless of your position, to be civil with one another as we continue this debate. And I think there's good, really important points on both sides. And so we just got to listen to each other in a civil way. But my vote here is no.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stone?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman?
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer?
Nay.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye, 5 ayes, 2 nays, and we are continuing this order until our next meeting, February 14th. For February 14th. Councilmember Holloman, thank you for raising your hand.
Thank you. Just a point of information or order, Mayor, once a vote has been started, there is no comment or conversation. It's just a vote. So let's keep that in mind and respect that as we go forward.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. The time for comments has passed. We've taken action. Thank you all who have joined us this evening. We're moving on now to item number 22, consideration of a plan and design commission recommendation to approve the Martin subdivision at 234 Green Bay Road with variations. Do we need a presentation? I'm hopeful that my council colleagues have done their homework. And I recognize that there are questions in the Q&A, which frankly, I would prefer to have read either by those posing those questions or by the city manager. But at the moment, does anybody need a presentation from this council?
No.
No.
Okay, great, thank you. So to that end.
Do you want a motion on it or?
Absolutely. Is that a motion, Councilmember Holloman?
Yeah, move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Oh.
Thank you. Okay, let's read the
This may not be a straight approval. I think that's what Hart's going to try and tell me.
Okay, we can talk about it.
Thank you, Councilman Holland. Mayor, if I may just, the appropriate motion would be to direct, I believe would be to direct the drafting of the approval document for your next agenda.
That's what I meant. Thank you.
That's correct.
All right.
Thank
you. So this is not final action, but we do want to hear from the folks who would like to provide input. City manager, do you want to read the comments or are there folks who wish to state their positions?
Thank you, Mayor. We received email communication from Jim Budich asking that his comments be read into the record. He is in the property contiguous to the single lot. He writes, in Highland Park, each lot shall have, quote, principal frontage on a public street, end quote. Providing an easement over someone else's property is not the same as having principal frontage on a public street. The lot has, at best, has derivative access egress to a public street. Buying 741 Stonegate for the sole purpose of providing an easement for a subdivision is not a hardship. It is a demonstration of using wealth for development. It is clear that re-subdividing 234 North Green Bay into 2 lots would not happen but for the purchase of 741 Stonegate. That purchase would appear solely designed to obviate Highland Park zoning code. Petitioner is required to present a, quote, hardship letter to support a variation. There is no hardship. They bought 741 Stonegate for $750,000 with full knowledge of the restrictions. They sold 741 Stonegate for $815,000 according to Lake County records, not a hardship. Variances are not a right. The petition should be denied. To do otherwise is to make a sham of our zoning code and will devalue my property in terms of worth and enjoyment. Please deny this petition.
Okay. And then I believe there are a few more in the Q&A. If members of the public wish to speak out regarding this issue.
Mike Braun. Mike, you can unmute yourself.
There. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, City Council members, for your work during these incredible times. And the action that you're talking about today came to my attention on January 7th when I saw a sign in front of my property. My wife and I have lived at our current address, 252 Green Bay Road, for 12 years and 2 months. We share approximately 278 feet of property line with the property in question. At the closest point, my house is less than 18 feet from the apparent easement on the Martins property. I have requested written documents, written description of the easement across the 232 Green Bay property, and have not received those to date. It does not appear in the City Council meeting package, and for many reasons, it's extremely important that I at least have a chance to review those, review that easement. I'd like to have my attorney take a look at it. I'd like to know what was agreed to in terms of drainage, width of the easement, how close it is to the property line. Like I said, right now, it's 18 feet from the corner of my house. The easement goes along the very borderline of the property. And there's a substantial drainage feature underneath the easement that allows property water from our property to drain down a ditch underneath the easement onto the subject property that we're talking about subdividing. Secondly, the design drawings don't adequately document existing topography, and I thank Andy Cross. He did a nice job of explaining why. But bottom line is there's a lot of both natural environmental features, relief to this property, relief in terms of grade change. The property appears, based on looking at the Google photographs, to have been a cut and fill site where they cut surface area from one area and then filled in a ravine area. You take a look at the really old Google drawings and you can kind of see that. I think that's significant. I think there's some environmental issues, at least one environmental issue that needs to be brought to light, and some other issues that are of concern. Then I guess the other thing that I just want to talk about briefly is that the proposal requires a landscape and screening provision for the property on Stonegate, but it doesn't require the same provision for the property on that abuts our 278 feet property that we share, where that's as close as, like I said, 18 feet from the corner of my house, actual structure, brick structure of my house. And I just want to know more. I want to understand why that can't be moved. If in fact you're going to grant this provision such that it doesn't encroach on my property, I'd like to know more about the actual easement, how it was structured. The house that this easement goes to from Green Bay Road, back to the back property at 234 Green Bay, hasn't existed for more than 20 years. That easement does not service an existing home. Nobody has used it. The property, we moved into our house in 2009. For several years, I never saw anybody back there. And then the Martins purchased the property, I think in 2016. Occasionally you'll see a vehicle go back and forth there. But that easement does not service the home that it was originally granted for. I simply think that if you would give us additional time to review not only the existing documents that are there, understand better, what the impacts that this action would potentially cause. There are a number of homes that have drainage issues already, and you're talking about making you're changing the topography and adding a lot of impervious surface to where it becomes a huge problem, not just a significant problem that we have now. I appreciate the time that Andy spent with me, Andy Cross from the City Hall. Gina's been very nice. I've had a couple of times where I've asked things and Gina's group has been very responsive. This is a big one for me though. So thank you very much.
So Mr. Brown, were you able to share these comments with the Plan Design Commission?
I did. I shared them beginning last week and then today, and they were great about providing answers. Unfortunately, the answer, particularly around the easement, how it's structured from Green Bay to the previous house that was there, things as simple as the width, elevation, drainage features that are required to be there, how close that easement, can somebody make it wider? Can they make it higher? Can they, what is it going to, that it's probably 400 feet from where Green Bay Road enters into where, the old house existed. I believe it's been gone for 20, 30 years. I don't know. It's just not, the reason for that, the intended purpose for that easement is not, it no longer exists. But to answer your question, Mayor Roddering, yes, I have shared them, and they have attempted to provide answers. Not all of them are complete answers, and a couple of them, I believe Andy actually agreed. He just simply didn't understand why, or have a good answer as to why the landscape provisions were not included on Green Bay as they are on the entrance to Stonegate for the property number 1. So yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Joel, curious to know, can you respond at least to the concerns, the engineering report, issues related to concerns about flooding, and answer Mr. Brom's issues that he's raised before the council?
Yes, Mayor, I can do my best to add to what Andy has stated to him. Stormwater matters would be handled at time of building permit issuance prior to any building permit issuance. This is a subdivision of land, so that's just something to note. So this doesn't mean that those matters don't need to be addressed. They certainly would as part of any development of one or more homes back there on one of those lots or both. As far as the landscaping aspect of things, there was talk about that with regard to the access to Stonegate, but was not addressed, if you will, with regard to this access easement. I'm assuming that that is based because it was already existing for a long time. Having said that, as the resident just mentioned, there hasn't been a home back there since 2000. So this easement has been here a long time, but there hasn't been a home here for a long time. The easement was here for, I think it was back in the 20s or something like that. And the home has been gone since 2000.
Okay, thank you. Gita, is there are there other comments from the public or council members want to weigh in? Councilmember Littler has her hand up.
Yes, Mayor. So I actually talked to several members of the PDC over the weekend, and I did that because it was a vote with a lot of notes and back and forth. And Director Fontaine, I realize you're at somewhat of a disadvantage since Mr. Cross was taking care of this. Assistant Director Cross was working so closely on this. But I do have several questions, some of which are processed, which I know the city will deal with later. But which is the applicant here tonight or no?
They should be, Madam Mayor. The Martins should be here.
So a couple of the things that I would raise are as follows. The easement was done in 1926. The easement crosses over both lots that 1 and 2, which are being asked to be subdivided. I don't understand why we need to have a separate driveway or a separate easement going through Stonegate, why both of those properties can't share the one easement onto Green Bay. So that's one question. I want to understand why the drawings that were presented have one house facing north and the other facing south. Originally, I was not at all opposed to this. If anything, I seconded the motion to consider this because I think it's within the right to ask for a variance. I think the PDC looked at it very carefully and thought it would be in character with the neighborhood by having 2 plots there and having those 2 developed. But I do have some actual problems with what is the outcome, at least at this point, including the extra easement for our neighborhood. And I think there's one other one. I will say that in the original proposal, they were asking for this to be divided into 5 lots. And it goes to show how well PDC really looks at what a community should look like. And that 2 is much more in keeping with what is being presented. So I don't know if it means, Director Fontaine, going back to you and getting some answers to those questions, or if the applicant is here to respond to them, but I would really appreciate some answers to that because I feel like it's really impeding on the neighborhood without the need to do so in terms of the Stonegate property. The other easement has been active or has been used all along. No one's contesting that. So it's just a question of whether it's going to be used by 2 plots and whether they will be developed because they would then use that instead of having street front property. And frankly, there's plenty of precedent in this town where a house is not right on the street and doesn't have that property and has an easement through to have a driveway.
So I'm sorry, Madam. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Just to respond to Councilmember Littler, I can't put an answer to all of those questions. The applicant is here tonight. I'm hoping he's been told. James
Can you guys hear me?
Martin, is here, and so can answer those questions. I just want to make mention of 2 things, though. Yes, the PDC only conditioned the new easement, if you will, to Stonegate have the landscaping, but council can attach reasonable conditions in addition to that, should they choose so, on this aspect of the development as well. But note that there is a access easement, but also a utility easement in that area. And so landscaping that area may not be feasible either. That's in terms of one other thing, in terms of, yes, one could pursue a subdivision of this, a standard subdivision, not with the variance request, and perhaps get more lots out of it. However, I want to caution the council on just doing the simple math of taking the gross lot area and dividing by 12,000, which is the minimum lot area. Because you have to remember there's going to be a road that would go through. So it's likely that in terms of efficiency, it won't yield the number of lots.
Excuse me, Director Fontaine, I'm not advocating that for 1 minute.
Okay.
I want to be really clear. The 2 is the limit. Okay, that's what PDC sent to us. There's a reason. I'm just saying that it's already been culled down somewhat. I want to be really clear. I'm not advocating for that.
Oh, I understand that. And I'm merely stating that I don't know if the reference point is 5. It's probably somewhat less than that because there would have to be a road. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Fontaine. Welcome, Martins. Happy to hear from you.
Hello,
Feel
everyone.
free to answer any questions, share your thoughts.
So this is our first time doing anything like this. So how long would you like us to talk? Should we address each of the questions asked one at a time, or should we introduce ourselves first?
If you could just answer the questions briefly, we're happy to meet you. Thank you for joining us. But given the length of this meeting, I'd ask that you keep your comments brief, but obviously this is your application and this is your opportunity to respond to council questions. So how's that for not clear directions?
Very not clear. It's just a tiny bit of us. We've lived here next to that lot. We've lived in the first lot, 232 Green Bay Road, which has 234 Green Bay Road as our backyard for 15 years. So this is about a 3.5 year process that it took us to get to this point. We were asked by the city to purchase 741 Stonegate, which took us a lot of time. We actually approached every single neighbor and asked them if we could give them $50,000 to be able to run a small drainage pipe 20 feet under their property. And everybody said no. So we were unable to do anything for many years. The city said we had to have drainage. So eventually we were able to make a deal to buy 741 Stonegate, which we did not want to do at all. We actually put $80,000 into rehabbing it. We lost about $60,000 on that. But
our kids helped us rehab it. So
during COVID, which was a great escape for them. But so in answer to Jim's question, let's see. Oh yeah, in answer to Jim's question, we purchased it for drainage. We were required to, and we're unable to potentially develop it until even for 1 or 2 homes or 5 homes or whatever, unless we have that drainage. And the answer to Mike's question, the longer easement that's existed for a long time has been there, for a long time, and we didn't consider. We were actually asked by the neighbors at 232 to consider the shrub screen to be extra tall, which is 10 feet, and we're willing to do that for him too. And somebody had asked about, could you make the easement wider? And I would say, yes, I had actually considered or thought about doing that, but I didn't want to necessarily, push the amount of changes, because all we're trying to do here is to just draw one line down the middle of a lot big enough to fit a football stadium. For reference of how big this lot is, it's big enough to put a high school football stadium inside it, and it would fit squarely. So this is a rectangular lot. We're looking to create 2 rectangles that are 2.5 times the normal size lot each. Every developer, if we don't get this done, we don't want to build a massive house there. We think this town needs a couple modest ranches back there, and we might potentially want to try to build one of those one day for our retirement. Can't remember what I was going to try to answer next. Do you have any questions that you want to focus on specifically?
Any questions from the council? Councilmember Littleworth.
Yeah, I asked why one of the houses is going north and one of the houses is going south, and why you need the 2 as driveways, or if the one is just going to be used for drainage.
So the easement as it exists today, we've always imagined, we have a niece 3 years old that we watch all the time. We raised our babies here. They're getting grown up, but it's very dangerous to have the idea of having 2 houses access through one driveway. The new house having one driveway and only one driveway accessing one house is much less dangerous for children, is much less cumbersome. But so if we had 3 houses all coming out of one driveway, I believe it technically has to become a road, and we don't want to do that to Mike. We do not want to put a road next to his house, and a road has to be much wider and a different circumstances. And Julie, you can ask me if that's an accurate explanation, that we could ask for that to be a road if we actually add a house to the one driveway. So in this scenario,
Excuse me, are you telling me that 232 and 234 would share a driveway?
we would actually like to split it so that it's 2 driveways. Right now, it is sharing.
Yes. Okay, so then
Yeah, we don't like that. We don't want
3.
definitely, we do not want 3. So we want 1 to go onto Stonegate, and we had that opportunity when we were forced to buy 741 to create a separate driveway out of that one, which is, we think is ideal. And it's also, I mean, Stonegate is an amazing street. We, you know, being a part of the association for when we had 741 for a little while, you know, we really love that, you know, we love that street and the idea of potentially having a house on that street. So
Councilmember Holloman has her hand up with a question.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think this is a unique situation, and you guys have done the best job that you could to try and make the most of it without increasing a huge amount of density in the neighborhood. Applaud that. I think this has come a long way from the first iteration of it, and fully support this. There are many situations in Highland Park with driveways that are shared. I have one. I would encourage you to avoid that if you could, and fully understand why you need the second access, having shared not 1, but 2 driveways, including one with Councilman Tapia. So those situations are unique and they can work, but I think you guys have proposed something that has very minimal impact to the neighborhood, and I would fully support this. I'm ready to call the question right now, unless there's other comments. I think we've heard.
Thank you. Councilmember Bloomberg has his hand up.
I had a couple of questions, and I know this has been addressed, but I still don't know that I understand it historically. We've had in Highland Park for a long time a prohibition against having property divided or subdivided or built on that does not have frontage on a street. Is that correct? That's directed to Joel.
Yeah,
how long have
this
we
is
had
not
that?
allowed. Yes, this is correct. This is why they're asking for the variances. Yes.
Right. So how long has that been a requirement?
I don't, it's a very, I would suspect a very long time, council member. I don't have the date of adoption of that requirement, but it is not a new requirement. That is for sure.
Right. And it precedes our flag lot limitation. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
Again, I don't have the specific dates.
Okay. So my next question is to the Martins, when did you or your family acquire this property?
the back property in 2016 and then our property in 2008. But this house that we live in was built in 1865.
Right, but
And
the
all of the
property that you're
subdivisions
seeking to subdivide does not have any frontage on any street.
Yes, and it's been vacant, you know, and growing lots of buckthorn for, I think, 60 years or something like that.
I understand that, but when you were told that you could subdivide it up to as many as 5 lots, to me, that response would be there's enough square footage that if it had abutted a street, you could divide it into 5 lots. But nobody in our staff ever said you had a right to divide it into 5 lots absent figuring out that relationship to our streets. Is that correct?
The developers who have looked to purchase the lot, so if we don't get this approved, we have to sell to a developer because we can't afford to, nor would we build on a lot that big, would attempt to put a road on that down where the easement is and create 5 to 7 lots actually, because they would tear down our house and they would create an extension of Leslie Lane. And that's what they all say they're going to do. Nobody here has approved it. That's just what they say they want to do. So the people looking to buy it that are developers that, you know, want to give us, then we want to, we would like to not part with it at all. We love living here. We love this property.
I understand that. I'm just trying to understand historically, there was a comment made in the materials that we read that staff had somehow indicated that this lot could be divided up into as many as 5 lots, but I don't think
They
that.
did indicate that to me in a city meeting with the city staff. Yes, that's when we initially purchased the property, they said that was possible, but you know, that
Possible with the solution of
with the street
figuring out access.
Right.
Nobody ever told you could do that just as of right. Is that correct?
I'm actually not sure. I think if you build a street and we tear down our house, there's nothing in the code stopping us from doing that. Is my understanding, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I just know that that's what all the developers talked about doing, and that's what the city has said that they would consider doing. Just the city, the city building people.
I understand. Okay, that's answered my question.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And I know several people are putting questions in the Q&A. I'm not quite sure why we've left that active, but if Rebecca Fishman and Francine LaBelle and Deborah want to raise their hand and state their questions, that's how we're taking whoever has now added their 11th question. Deborah Roddy, thank you. If you could raise your virtual hand, Gita will call on you to share your questions with the council.
Okay, Andrew Eichner?
Yes, thank you very much. This is why I originally came to this meeting, not for the vaccine, but I jumped on that one too. I am very concerned about this. I live at 791 Stonegate. I've lived there since 1999, and I'm sort of at the bottom of the hill when Stonegate goes down, the lowest point. And I have spent an inordinate amount of money in the last 22 years with drainage problems from property east of me and even west of me, but primarily east, coming down into my property. I cannot conceive of taking these 2 football-sized lot, the aggregate, which is now buckthorn and grass and land, and then putting 2 houses on 12,000 square foot lots, 2 houses that are going to be somewhat decent in size. They're not going to be log cabins, that will not directly impact the drainage going down. It's just impossible. I'm not an architect or an engineer. And I think that is a hardship on me that is weighs against any grant of a variance based on hardship, because with due respect to the Martins, and they sound like great people, is that when they bought this property, they knew about the variance that was needed. They knew they couldn't go out to had to go out to the street. And that was a risk they took. And this easement has been, I went to law school, it's been sitting there for 100 years and nobody's acted on it. And I know that Joel said that, well, if we grant this, we're going to have storm project and so on and so forth to make sure that everything is copacetic. But that's sort of like that's closing the barn after the cow is already out. I would like to study for people to tell me how that water is not going to run downhill that was not previously running downhill, because it's not going to go uphill and it's not going to go to Green Bay. And that to me is a very big problem. And for the people adjacent to me, 781, going up the hill. And I also agree with, just to add, that what Jim Buttigieg said about a variance showing hardship. And I don't know what the hardship is here, particularly since it was purchased knowing the limitations. It would be one thing if they didn't know. That's what I think what the point was Tony was trying to get at. And I also think that, I remember, if an easement isn't used for a long period of time, that it sort of falls into desuetude. So that's another issue that I think may be raised by people at Stonegate who will be affected by this. It's not. So that's a big concern of mine. And I don't know how anybody can answer that it will not affect the drainage going, because water will run downhill from 2 houses that were not there before. And the buckthorn would absorb a lot more. That's all I have to say.
Andrew, buckthorn is an invasive species, but regardless of that, we heard about your problem with the flooding. Mike mentioned it. And we've been talking to Black and the other developers, and we've got a solution for that, because I think that you'll find with the houses back there and redoing of the drainage and everything, it should prevent further flooding for you or whatever problems you're having. So James can speak to it because he's been talking to them.
So yeah, a couple of things on that. One, when we bought the property, we didn't do any due diligence. We built and sold the company, and we invested most of the proceedings of that into this property, thinking it would just be a great investment. Turns out it's the worst investment we've ever made.
It's been really horrible for
And
us.
then also we agreed with the city that the impermeable space that we would create with these two properties is limited to that which we already had the right to based on it being one house. So these two homes are each actually limited more than most homes would be as far as how many square foot can be impermeable. But it will help because all of the impermeable space we're going to add is actually going to drain through drainage under your house instead of through your house. So that's why we had to acquire 741, which actually did create incredible hardship on our finances to actually turn that over. And like I said, we lost money on that just trying to get drainage so that your house would not get as much water as it does right now, being mostly buckthorn.
I'd have to look at it. I really don't understand how that adding a drainage thing would just go under my house would not somehow affect my house. It just doesn't sound right to me. I'm not saying you're wrong.
741 Stonegate, not your house.
It will divert the water.
Under your houses, all houses below it, it takes the water and puts them under so that they don't go through your yard.
Yeah, to proper drainage instead of having it open land.
Okay, thank you. Gita, who else? I think Rebecca Fishman had a comment. You're muted, Gita.
I was just going to go in order. Steve Sanderman
Okay.
next had his hand up.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you carry on.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council, and Manager Newkirk. My name's Steve Sanderman. I live at 840 Timber Hill Road. My house is adjacent to the northwest corner of this property. My bedroom window is about 20 feet from the west property line. My two concerns were one, were going to be the setbacks, not wanting the lot one house to be too close to my house. I was actually very pleased when I saw how the applicant had subdivided the two houses and had focused there's a almost 35-foot wide setback on the west property line, which I was happy with. I was pleased with that. So I applaud the applicant for that part of it. My other concern is, as everyone else's, is drainage. I am directly downhill from the property. And I am concerned about the new impervious surface and how the water is going to flow. I do want to just thank the Highland Park Public Works Department real quick. I talked with Joe O'Neill today. He was extremely helpful in talking with me about the process and how this really isn't for tonight's meeting. Tonight's meeting is really just about the subdivision, and the engineering portion will come later. So that was really my issue. I am concerned about the drainage, but the only other thing I was hoping to say was I was not given any notice on the Plan Commission meeting because I wasn't required to receive notice for it. But it would have been great if I was. So maybe the council can consider changing that part of the ordinance that on a subdivision like this, where there are actually 13 direct neighbors to this property, that it is a requirement for public notice and even a public hearing at the Plan Commission level, so that we all had a little bit more time. I think you probably heard other people say it would have been great if we had more time to understand what they were doing before it went to City Council for approval. So just something to consider. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sanderman. Joel or Hart, do you want to speak to the notice portion of that comment?
Yes, Madam Mayor. As a matter of fact, staff has a subdivision recommendation package as part of the work program. We have been working on that last year, and it's should be finished up this first quarter for consideration. Among the things that we're suggesting and would come to council with committee of the whole would be to have that notice changed as well. So Notice was properly served per our code for this meeting, Madam Mayor, and for the PDC, so I can assure you of that. But I do take the point, and staff has been on that matter and understand the comments made, and perhaps that could be an improvement like we're talking about.
Great, thank you. Gita, I'll let you continue to name who's next for comments.
Annette Ray?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm on the northern end of where they have the easement on Cheryl Lane. And I do think if this is to go forward, you need to address how they are going to block the driveway access between our properties. It's basically in most of our backyards. And there has not been, since they tore down the old brick house that used to be on the property, which was more in line with lot 2, not lot 1, where there was never any driveway, any road going back to where you're showing us where they have this easement. And I guess since it was 1926, that is an incredible amount of time to now allow it to be resurrected and used, considering a driveway has never gone back to the end of the property or road or anything. It always stopped within what is considered now lot 2.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you.
Mayor, if you're comfortable, we'll just go to all the other comments. Deborah Rod.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we said, I'm Deborah Roddy. I'm an attorney and a former chairperson of the Highland Park Design Review Commission. And I do thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. As the crow flies, my home at 183 Green Bay Road is just one house away from the single lot known as 234 North Green Bay Road. I received no notice, so I would add that into the perspective of who gets noticed and when. For all the years that I've lived here, I didn't even know there was such an address as 234 North Green Bay Road. I've gone up and down the street and I've walked by, but I never knew it was there. But there are certain facts that are known, and there is no right to any variation from the zoning code. There is no right to re-subdivide a lot that was itself the product of a new subdivision in 2002. There is no hardship in having one home on 1.5 acres in Highland Park. Many people would value a property that size. Placing 2 homes on this open space does nothing more than eliminate more open space in our community. There are many creatures that live at 234 North Green Bay Road, and they will be displaced. Petitioners allege that 234 is North Green Bay Road is landlocked between existing subdivisions. It's actually not landlocked, as we've discussed. It has an existing easement. There are no 2 lots there, in other words. There's just one, and it's not landlocked. The petitioners say that they bought the property with information. I think that Councilman Blumberg, addressed that issue earlier. What they've been told, I don't know, but there's caveat emptor to any buyer, and that's no reason to run roughshod over the zoning code. The Martins have owned that property for many years, and they should have known. And if they've been ideating and, as they say, and working with lots of folks to develop that property, that was their decision. That's not a hardship. Angel Street, which is the correspondence that went to the city, and the Martins say in their letter that they bought 741 Stonegate Drive solely to gain drainage and driveway easements. Their letter says that they sold 741 at a loss. Lake County real estate records say they purchased it for $750,000 and they sold it for $815,000, and recognize that they're selling it without the use of the front and side yard. That's actually one of the most attractive parts of 741 Stonegate. And I would also say that for the value of everyone in that neighborhood, it is that house, 741, that gives everyone the impression that they're going into a great neighborhood that has beautiful yards. I can only say that there's no hardship here. that this will change the neighborhood, the approach to Stonegate. I've been living in Highland Park virtually all of my life, and I just don't think it's right to be granting variations without a hardship. It makes a mishmash of our community. And I feel bad. The Martins are my neighbors of sorts, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but I just think that this needs to be denied.
Thank you, Deborah. Next is Francine.
Yep. Hi, this is Francine. I'm at 761 Stonegate Drive, and I have my spouse, Michael Glenday, with me, and he will be presenting our points.
Okay, so we've lived here for 14 years. We live directly south of the property in question. We are adjacent, so we've had a lot of drainage issues, just as other people on the street have had. Over the years, we've experienced significant water runoff coming from that property. It's gotten worse as they've cleared trees trying to market that property. I have video of the water runoff coming through into my property. We've had multiple events where we've had water intrusion into our basement, and we spent a lot of money on remediation. And so our primary concerns are regarding the drainage issues. The Martins did approach us about 2 years ago asking to build a pipe through our property. At the time, there was 5 houses being considered there, and there was a talk of a retaining wall being, a retaining pond, sorry, being built back there. We never actually said no. We just never heard from them again. We were considering it, but with a retaining pond proposition, we likely weren't going to accept that. So I guess, I've heard from the director of development that, drainage is not at the subject of this variance, that would be handled during the permitting process. But I think that there's enough objections from the people we've heard tonight and the rest of the people on the street in our Stonegate Residents Association who have actually requested that this decision be put on hold for now, that we get more information and that we get more confirmation of what's the impact. I don't think building drainage through the easement north of our building is actually going to help, because it's still considerably uphill from our property. I don't see how the rest of the property can be drained from that uphill location. So anyway, I thank you for listening to my comments, and would hope that you could defer this decision tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Fishman. And if you could state your full name, please.
I'm sorry. I'm Rebecca Fishman. I'm here with my husband, Ira. We live at 837 Stonegate. We live on the 8th house down the street. It's completely the flat area of the street. We've lived here for 24 years. We have a drainage problem on Stonegate. I'm all the way down the street. The water runs from the very hill at the top all the way down the street. Every single time there's a storm, you see sewer after sewer overflowing and overflowing to the next sewer. We have a problem with sewage and drainage in our backyards. We have a very wooded backyards where many animals dwell all through the seasons, and we have to the east of us a home that has almost like a cesspool pond that lives in their backyard at all times, because we have a drainage problem down our street. You've heard over and over of people who are talking about this, and they live up the street. Well, I live halfway down the street, and it's still a problem. We are going to have a big problem and opening up another can of worms if we start to build and take away something that's up the hill that will absorb water. A small pipe is not going to do it. A small pipe is, all of us on Stonegate probably have drainage systems because we've had to put them in over the years. It's a very costly thing to do on our properties, and we've done it on our property multiple times. A small drain or even a bigger drain is not going to do it, because when water comes quickly and it's flowing downhill, it goes to the lowest place on the street or in the area. And it continues to do this over the many years we've lived here, as I said. So that's the main thing that I had concern about. The second thing is this. We are concerned about adding a driveway at the top of the street. We have a blind corner. It is dangerous. We have people who come flying down the street like a bat out of you-know-what, because it's very steep and it comes swervy around, and it is literally a blind corner. 741 is the first house. But before that house exists, there's like a half-empty lot. And before that, there is like a bridge of bushes and trees. That's technically where the easement is supposed to be. It is dangerous. If a driveway goes there, the potential of cars coming in and out of there, whether it's, I was told that all the construction will happen from Green Bay Road. So I'm not talking about construction. I'm talking about people going in and out of there who live there. Whether kids are going to come around and play on their driveways, whether they're going up and down the street, it's dangerous. I know our street is used for skateboarders. People ride their bikes down fast. We have issues during snowstorms like the other day. My car going 5 miles an hour slid down that street and spun around at the bottom and did circles like donuts because it was dangerous and it was icy. It is not an ideal to have any easement, to have any driveway on the street. It's a disaster waiting to happen. You're going to hear my voice, and I promise you something is going to happen. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Things happen now at the end of the street where there isn't even a driveway, but the thought of it it's concerning to me. We're also going to be bringing, people have friends or parties, all the overflow parking is going to come onto Stonegate. And as one of the women before me spoke, it's going to change the Stonegate neighborhood. We don't need it. It doesn't feel right. And it's not a natural thing. And I just think it's a negative. It's not going to be a positive for our community. And I have concerns for our street. I have concerns for how it backs up to Cheryl Lane and Timber Hill as far as the drainage as well. So those are my concerns, and I appreciate the time you took to listen.
Thank you. Next is Beverly Beck.
Hi, my name is Beverly Beck, and I live at 891 Stonegate, so I'm even further west than the Fishmans, and we certainly have drainage issues completely down the street. What I want the City Council to consider, and this might be more of a public works issue, is that we have a significant water pooling issue in the cul-de-sac that is just slightly west of where the Martins want to put the driveway, the easement out. And they also have a water pooling issue on Timber Hill, just on the driveway, on the streetway. And I just hope that, and I hear James and Sally, they're wonderful people. We've known them for years. We're very fond of them. And maybe this is the least intrusive way for this development to happen. I hear them that if they sell it to a builder, something significantly less attractive to all of us on Stonegate may happen. But at the same time, I think the city has an obligation here, because we already, as Rebecca alluded to, have a significant freezing problem. I have had a similar experience to Rebecca, where I try to get up the hill and your car will just slide right back down. And I have two friends who have had their cars stuck in pooled water, and the cars are totaled because there is a real drainage problem on Stonegate that's on the waterway that belongs to the city. So I don't know, we didn't receive notice because we're at 891, we're significantly further down, but the Pine Tree Homeowners Association owns the land that's adjacent to this. So we as homeowners, there's 35 of us who are in a homeowners association, we own the land that's adjacent to it. We have a sprinkler system running through there. Maybe all of us should have known, because we own that land that touches this. And since the association owns that property, it seems to me that the City Council should have let the association know that this variance was being asked for. And that did not happen to my knowledge. So in any case, I think it deserves further study, because the drainage problem goes beyond each of our individual properties. but it goes back to you guys because there's a drainage problem that belongs to the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Can
Beverly.
I say something really quick? So we've been told over and over again that we absolutely do have the right, and of course this is just about dividing the land. It has nothing to do with the easement, which already exists. We do have the right to build a big house with the amount of impermeable space that would be allowed for that lot. That is completely within our right. I don't think that's in question here. So any drainage issue that comes from the amount of water that is drained off of that amount of impermeable space is going to be the same, and that's not going to change as a result of this vote or this subdivision at all. But yeah, I've seen the drainage issues on Stonegate, and I feel like the city should definitely address that.
Thank you. Gita, any other comments from the public?
Mayor, we've heard from 2 residents that are asking to speak again. Do you want to entertain additional comments?
No, we kind of have a rule of one bite at the apple for comments. Feel free to email us if you have more to say. I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the depth of comments that have been provided so far. And at the moment, I'm going to hear from my council colleagues. We'll start with Councilmember Littleworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I still have a couple of questions, especially to the Martins' last comment that they were told all along that they could build there. Are you referring to the Stonegate property, or are you referring to the parcel that we're talking about subdividing?
Oh, 234 Green Bay Road, the parcel. So, I mean, there was a house there, it was torn down. So it is a property that had a house. It used to have an apple orchard on it.
Yeah, it still has a street too.
Yeah.
Okay, and just to Councilmember Bloomberg's point, I mean, I'm very confused here because I don't understand how, or you were told you could build one house, what you're saying.
Right, so there's,
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Stolberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question that may or may not be the preference of the rest of the council or the staff, or certainly the applicant. But it seems to me that, most of the residents on this street and as part of this association have asked for some more information and some more time. I know at the PDC, when that comes up, the PDC is kind enough to tell the applicant, hey, you may see how this vote is going, you may not, or do you wish to hear some of the questions and concerns, and are both parties willing to bring it back when there's more information that may or may not change things? So I'm not stepping on anyone's toes, but I would put it out there before this discussion goes too much further and ultimately maybe goes to a vote. If this is what we're hearing from the residents of the street, if it's amenable to the applicant, maybe if time is not of the essence and that would solve some issues for both parties, I'm always trying to get a way to make everybody happy. If that would do it, great. If not, I'm prepared to vote this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Martins, do you want to respond or do you want us to continue to take comments?
Yeah, so Adam, I think that would be relevant when somebody decides to develop it, as far as how they would do drainage or how they would put a driveway in or any of that stuff. None of that. I don't think any of that's relevant for this vote or this thing. We've been working on it for 3.5 years with the city back and forth. Talked to a lot of people about a lot of things. I feel like that, how all that stuff is solved is up to, if we sell one or both of the properties, is up to what they want to put there and where they want to be driving it out of whatever driveways. The easement exists. That's not up for issue. That was filed with the county a couple of years ago. And, we're hundreds of thousands of dollars where this project could bankrupt us. And we've gone back and forth with the city for 3.5 years to try to develop it, with all these things we did not know existed, all these challenges and everything. So we're hoping you guys, help us move forward with, and we'll make changes, whatever we need to make everything fair and great, beautiful.
We've been trying really hard to take the neighborhood into consideration. And
Councilmember Stone.
Thank you. I'm sorry that you've been through all of this. It sounds like just kind of an awful situation. But I agree with some of the statements made by Councilman Bloomberg that, our code says that there's got to be a principal street for a lot, and an easement is not a principal street. And I agree with a couple of the members of the Plan Commission who believe that this sets a bad precedent. And for that reason, I'm not in favor of subdividing the property.
Thank you. Councilmember Tapia?
Yeah, I'm concerned that there's a number of open questions on the part of the neighbors. And there seems to be a confluence of different issues, right? It's the request in front of us. There's the drainage issues that seem to be separate. There's issues about maybe something falls on the city in terms of engineering and the flooding that goes on there. So from a process perspective, I would be concerned, fully sympathetic to the Martins' request in the 3.5 years during this, to move forward with some of these questions that maybe can be answered satisfactorily if there's a little bit more time to work through them. Not that all questions or concerns will be answered satisfactorily. I don't think that's the goal, but a sense that the feeling that there's time to hear the plan and understand what is what and what is within this request and what is outside of it. So the neighbors can feel that they were heard and they had time to process it. And the Martins had a chance to answer that with a little bit more time with the city's help, so there's clarity about what is being approved and not approved.
Thank you. So I have a question for Corporation Counsel, and that is, if we vote against this proposal for subdivision, is there a waiting time that the Martins need to allow to toll before they can reapproach the city?
Mayor, I don't believe so. We do have a successive application rule in the zoning code, but as I know the council is aware, this is not a zoning application. I don't believe there's a successive application rule. They'd have to go back through the process, which includes having it reviewed by the Plan and Design Commission again. But that would be it.
Okay. I just wanted us to be clear. What's it? Councilmember Tapia, you have your hand up?
I mean, is it possible to ask for just, if they chose it, the Martins chose it a continuance, so there's not a vote, it's just buying a little bit of time and then bringing it up?
I asked them that.
That was what Councilmember Stolberg asked, and I believe the request was not responded to. And if I'm wrong, Martins, feel free to correct me. Councilmember Bloomberg, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I agree with what Councilmember Stone said and Councilmember Stolberg's comments. I'm really not comfortable granting this request. And I understand that we could get other kinds of requests from a professional developer. I'm not sure how I would respond to those either. It depends on what is before me. But what's before me right now, I think sets a bad precedent for the reasons that several members of the Plan Commission, including the current chair, expressed. I'm also very persuaded by a number of the comments in Mr. Budish's letter. The drainage issue, I hear the residents and the concerns that have been expressed. Drainage is always a concern in any piece of property. It is an engineering issue. It does have to be addressed. I want to make it clear that's not my principal concern right now. That would be a concern at the time of development to make sure that we do have drainage under control. I'm very concerned about the comments that are made about the condition of the street, especially in the winter, and the dangerous nature of that. And I do think that has to be addressed. It's somewhat of a separate issue, though.
Right. Okay. So with that, I think we need to call the question. I can't even remember. I apologize. Did we have a motion and a second on this item?
You do.
Yes, that's right. It was findings of fact, and then you were coming back. Okay, so with that, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia?
We've never been in a situation like this before. Do we have certain choice to make here, or?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm going to step in. This is a vote of the council now. This is the time for the council to speak.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And this is, if I may, Mayor, this is a motion to direct the drafting of a document to approve the plat of subdivision.
Correct. Thank you.
Councilmember Tapia?
No.
Councilmember Stolberg.
No.
Councilmember Stone.
No.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
No.
Councilmember Holloman.
Yes.
Councilmember Littleworth.
Yes.
Mayor Rotering.
No, 5 nays, 2 yays, and so this will not move forward as a subdivision. Martins, please be in touch with Joel Fontaine, and you can discuss next steps, if any, but for tonight, this has been turned down by the council. Thank you for joining us. Our next item is consideration of a plan and design commission recommendation to approve a 13-unit mixed-use plan development at 55 and 57 St. John's Avenue. Given the amount of time that we've all been sitting on Zoom, I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute break. We will be back in action at 7:45. Do we need to take a vote on that, Hart, or can we just take a break?
No, you can declare, as the chair of the meeting, Mayor, you can declare a recess until 7:45.
Sounds good. Recess till 7:45. Thanks, everyone. This next item is consideration of a Plan and Design Commission recommendation to approve a 13-unit mixed-use plan development at 5557 St. John's Avenue. Do we need a presentation on this project? I'm seeing heads shaking no. Okay, so to that end, are there any members of the public who are here to comment on this, or do we want to hear from council members in advance of the Councilmember Littlemore has her hand up, so why don't we first hear from council colleagues and then we can hear comments from the public if there are any. Councilmember Littlemore.
I was just a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
To accept this, finding, to do further findings of fact and ask them to be written up. So I was just going to put that on the table so then we can discuss it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stone.
I just have a number of questions.
Okay, so you have a motion. Oh, sorry, we have a second. Great, thank you. Okay.
Can I, it's just, again, I'm sorry, Mary, if I can clarify, is that a motion to direct the drafting of approval documents? Okay, I'll make sure it's clear for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Councilmember Stone.
So many of my questions, I believe, are for the applicant. I don't know if the applicant is with us.
It appears the applicant is with us.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions about the landscaping. There are additional evergreens proposed, which I appreciate, and that seems to make up for the relief requested in the ornamental trees. But I'm curious why the request was for 80 less shrubs than required, which is, a substantial number. And let me ask my second landscaping question, and then I can get to the other questions. There's a reference to the use of pre-emergent pesticides in the landscape beds. And I just want to make sure that these won't be used in the wooded area because they could adversely impact the trees and vegetation in that area.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, did you want to respond?
Yes. So I believe your first question was regarding the number of shrubs that we currently have in our plan. Yep. Through our landscape design, we tried to make sure that we were taking into account the existing mature landscaping that already exists on the south side of the street. So our landscape architect was using what he believes is best practices to provide as many shrubs as we possibly could in areas that would allow them to grow and flourish. And the south end of the site has a very mature canopy that already exists from the size of these trees that are there. So, it is something we've done our best to squeeze in as many as we can. We did go back from our previous design and have almost doubled what was in our last presentation to the Plan and Design Commission, and have done our best to squeeze as many in as we can that we believe will survive and flourish based on the current conditions.
Thanks. And then the second question was about the pre-emergent pesticides. Is that just for the beds, the new beds?
I would believe so. I'm not 100% sure of that specific comment. I'd have to defer to our architect or landscape architect. I don't believe our landscape architect is on. Our architect, Aaron Byers, is on. He may be able to clarify that. I believe it looks like he's just joined.
So I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to be used on the existing south lot.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Could you repeat the question?
Yep, there was a reference in the landscape plan to pre-emergent pesticides, and I just wanted to make sure that that is just for the new beds and that would not be used on the existing south lot where it might adversely impact the trees and vegetation.
Correct. Yeah, the intent was to minimize impact to the south half of the site as much as possible. So that's why the majority of the development was happening as much to the north as we could. So
those pesticides though would be not used on that south part.
On the existing area of the site, no.
Okay, thank you. And then I was wondering, there's very large expanses of glass on the building. Did you speak at all about bird-friendly glass? Is that something you would consider?
Yes, I think that that's something that, we could take into consideration.
Okay, and then in terms of affordable housing, I have a couple of questions there. It seems that the number of units, if I'm doing my math correctly, I'm looking to Director Fontaine. If there's 13 units, there should be 2.6 units of affordable housing, but there was no mention made of that fractional unit. Is that something that's going to have a fee in lieu paid? And let me ask my second affordable housing question, then you can answer them both together. I didn't see reference to what the AMI would be for the 2 units. And I wanted to make sure that there's one that's in the lower tier that under 50% and one in the probably in that below 80% tier.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
Okay, so first question, the number of units, affordable units on site required are 2. So the base number of units of the development is 10. There are 2 affordable units in that development, and there are 3 market rate unit bonuses. So that takes us to 13 total units. So the number is a flat 2. And you're right, Councilmember Stone, that if there is a partial affordable unit requirement, that a payment in lieu would be required for that partial unit. But in this case, there isn't. The second question had to do with the affordability of the 2 units, the 2 affordable units proposed. And by code, those are required to be 65% of area median income. So any development that has fewer than 3 affordable units, in this case, this is 2, that's the requirement for the rental.
So 65 is the average?
The average, it's the middle tier that you were referring to tiers that, I'm sorry, I should have used that terminology. So the 51 to 80% income tier and affordable on average to those earning 65% of area median. So it's the middle tier, if you will, of our 3-tiered system.
Okay. And then I've got 2 more questions. On the light fixtures, I did not see on the spec sheets whether these are dark skies compliant. So I just wanted to make sure that staff would verify that they are compliant.
We will. And they are compliant with our Article 6 performance standards. We're bug rating, and the Kelvin has been reduced to 3,000 Kelvin for the lights. Those were higher before. As part of the PDC process, those were reduced. Also, the overall height of the lights in the rear are now, they're 11 feet tall, which is what they tried to do is the lowest practical height to keep the lights low, but still serve the purpose of lighting the area.
Okay, I appreciate that, because that was a concern of mine, to make sure that light doesn't impact those neighbors to the east. And then the last question, one of the residents brought up an issue regarding parking for construction vehicles. I am wondering whether the developer can purchase parking permits at the train station lot for any vehicles that can't park on site during the construction itself, so that they're not on the neighboring streets, or if there's some other solution.
Yes, it's something that we can definitely look into. We do have a site that we are only utilizing a portion of for the construction. So I think we can do a portion of it on site, but we will work with our contractor in the city, the best we can to minimize the impact of the contractors on site.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Lidwar.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, I wanted to really commend both our staff and the developers on the work that they did with PDC, because this clearly went back and forth several times. This is not an easy stretch of land. Several of your council members and mayor live in this immediate area, and we know this property very well. I have to say that I was thrilled to see a 3-bedroom unit for affordable housing. It is very rare when we have these kind of properties come in that we get a 3-bedroom family unit, and that's what it becomes, is a family unit. So I was thrilled that rather than 2 2-bedrooms or a 1 and a 2, we ended up with a 3-bedroom. And for that alone, I'm just thrilled on that aspect of it. Secondarily, while it is different in character, which I initially kind of looked at and I thought, well, it's very, very pretty. It's very light in feel by having your parking underneath, so you're raised it up, by having everything shielded and set back in a sense the way we've done on the Albion project on top in terms of some of the appliances and whatnot up top. I think it has a very good feel to it, and it's lovely as an entryway into the neighborhood. So I just really wanted to commend you on a tough lot and on really doing a superior job in what we've seen so far. And thank you to the PDC for their care in going through this too.
Thank you. Councilmember Stolberg.
Thanks, Mayor. So next time I get to go before Councilperson Littleworth, because I was going to say the same thing, with one exception. The 3-bedroom's tremendous, and being liaison to the PDC and serving on the PDC, that is something that is so rare and so in dire need in our community. So I applaud the applicants on that. It is a tough site. This went through many iterations of some tough neighbors and some tough plan commission questions. And I just wanted to say I will be supporting this evening. I think the applicant did a great job of hearing the neighbors, coming back on multiple occasions to try and do whatever it is they could do. And I think, a lot of people were voicing some displeasure over the style. Unfortunately, the code doesn't allow us to argue taste. And I think the applicant getting rid of a old, blighted, dilapidated site, I think is great. I think, just for edification for those on the call, I know our first floor retail component is also part of the code. I know there was some discussion about the size of the retail part that you were going to put in there. But again, our code doesn't, unless I'm wrong, Joel, doesn't tell us how much of the FAR or what percentage. And I wish you guys luck, because I think that neighborhood with the right, no matter how small it is, whether it's coffee and donuts or a sandwich shop or whatever it is, I think if you do it right, the neighborhood will reward you with keeping it busy. So I hope the neighbors are happy with what came out of this process. And from my opinion, this was a really good example of how our public process works and goes back and forth between the neighbors, staff making suggestion and advice, and the applicant certainly attempting to respond in doing so. So thank you. But biggest point, great job on the 3-bedroom.
Thank you. Councilmember Bloomberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I want to address the 3-bedroom issue, which I agree is important to have, and I'm excited about it because they are rare, but it's really required. And the initial plan did not include that, so I'm glad that's in. But there was some discussion in front of the Housing Commission about this, and we wound up with a 3-bedroom unit and a 1-bedroom unit, and that doesn't quite satisfy what the developer would normally be required to do under these circumstances. So I would like Joel to explain the issue of distribution, not of the total number of units, but how the number of bedrooms per unit and how many 1, 2, or 3-bedroom units are required to be furnished in relationship to an existing development.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Sure, please.
So this is a good question, and just takes a bit of explaining. So the way the code works is that you are required to mirror the distribution of unit types through your provision of the affordable units in a project on site. In this case, the affordable unit requirement is only 2 units, but they have 3 unit types in the building. So they're not able to do that, right? Unless they provided either more units than were required by the code or got what's called a departure from the requirements. Now, departure from the requirements in this case is not a variance. It's not a modification, rather, it's a departure. And so the question then becomes is, well, how far is the departure from what the code would otherwise require? We understand that they can't provide 3, so we know that there's 2. And so the least departure, according to staff's analysis, would be provided by a 2 and a 3 bedroom unit for this project. What was proposed initially was a 1 and a 2. The Housing Commission looked at that and said, hey, we really want a 3. And so that's how the 1 and 3 came about. The applicant had stated, and I won't make their argument for them, but that there were cost considerations and why they asked for some dispensation from the minimum deviation from the code. So just to reiterate, the minimum deviation from the code would be a 2 and a 3 bedroom. There has to be a deviation from the code because there's only 2 affordable units, while there are 3 different types of unit styles in the building. So the question becomes, whether a 2 or a 3 or a 1 and a 3 as recommended would suffice as a departure, an acceptable departure from the code by council. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Joel. I think that was, at least for me, that was very clear. I hope for everybody else. And there are other developments around town where departures have been allowed, but typically in developments involving more than 2 inclusionary units. And for me, one of the issues is that although we have a 3-bedroom unit, and that represents a much larger opportunity for a bigger family to come into this area, the other unit is a 1-bedroom unit, which is going to be very tough to find a family to fill. And to me, this is an important location to encourage as much family usage in terms of our inclusionary zoning as possible. I would still prefer to see a 3-bedroom unit and a 2-bedroom unit as a closer following of what's required. I understand what the developer has said. I really just wanted to bring this out. The other issue has to do with what Councilman Stolberg mentioned. I think that the use on the first floor is probably appropriate, but I don't know that this is necessarily the best place to require commercial zoning, particularly with the way things are right now with the pandemic. The trains aren't being used that much, and that's really the attraction to having some of the commercial units on the floor of this development. So that might be a way to reduce the bulk of the development.
Thank you. Councilmember Holloman. Oh, I'm sorry. Director of Community Development, Fontaine, raised his hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on that point, I just want to make clear to the council that in our use for this zoning district, the use that is being proposed is the only use that would allow multifamily above. It's essentially has to be multifamily above first floor commercial. Now, our code does not specify what really is meant by first floor commercial. And so I just want to state for the record, and I have in the attachments in the documents, that for this B1 zoning district, 25% of that first floor is represented by commercial. And I deem that would be satisfactory given the balance of both this district being a low density business district, the pressures of the economy, meaning we don't need a lot of excess retail or commercial space. And I remind you that it's not just retail that needs to go here. It could be commercial space as well. So I just wanted to state that for the record. That's an interpretation with regard to the B1 zoning district. And so if we eliminated all commercial, there is no use in the use table that would allow this development. So I just want to counsel about that. And that's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Holloman.
I think this is a great solution and has done a remarkable job of fitting within that zoning code. This is B1, right? Like this is not residential. So I think we've all spoken. I think we've seen a great opportunity to bring additional affordable housing into this area. And I would like to move to call the question if we can.
Thank you for that. I want to share my comments as well. And I appreciate, Joel, what you just stated in terms of what is considered B1. It's not clear to me if it would have been sufficient to just have small dry cleaners on the first floor of a multifamily building to say that that would have been sufficient to meet that requirement under B1. But my sense of this neighborhood, and having lived here essentially all of my 60 years, this feels large. This feels big for the site. And I first want to say, I echo my colleagues in terms of the support for the 3-bedroom, greatly appreciated, much needed, wonderful addition to the neighborhood, and also appreciate the developers' willingness to work with the neighbors, with the PDC, and you took so much of what they had to say under consideration, and it's appreciated. But the multifamily building next door, which I recognize is not B1, but is actually, I think, R5, is 2 stories. And the ones across the train tracks are 2 stories. And to me, 2 stories would have felt more in keeping with the character of this neighborhood, which is one of the requirements of the finding of fact. So to that end, I just wanted to share those comments, but I did want to say thank you for taking over an opportunity to bring more housing and specifically more affordable housing to the Braeside neighborhood. Greatly appreciated. Councilmember Tapia.
Yeah, I've been very enthusiastic about this development for many of the reasons stated here. So, I mean, I'm ready to vote.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? We do. We have a motion. We have a second. Okay. With that, will the clerk please call the vote? Oh, do we have any comments from the public, Gita?
No, Mayor, there are no virtual hands raised.
Okay. And Hart's going to tell me that we are asking to have final documents drafted, or
I did that already, Mayor. I did one thing we didn't cover. I want to clarify. The agenda materials included several conditions, most of which were from the PDC, a couple additional ones from staff. I wanted to confirm with the movement and seconder that the intent is that all of those are incorporated into the final approval document. I'm seeing heads. I'm seeing heads nodded. I want to just confirm that for the record.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Terrific.
yes, those are accepted by the movement.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stone.
I had asked a question about bird-friendly glass. They said that they would look into it. I don't know that that needs to be in the documents. I just want to make sure that that's on the record, and if that's something that's possible, that moves forward as well.
Thank you. And Councilmember Bloomberg, was your hand up, or did I just see? Nope. Okay, great. Let's go to the vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Tapia. Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
No.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
No, 5 ayes, 2 nays, and we will be back with final documents in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, Hart.
Probably, given the plan development, I'm guessing second meeting in February is more likely, but we'll endeavor to get it done as quickly as we can.
Okay, sounds good. Terrific. Thank you all. And thank you, Mr. Weiss. Looking forward to being in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, is there any business from the council? Seeing none, is there business from city staff?
Thank you, Mayor. We did receive during this meeting an email. So with your permission, I'll just read that into the record if I may.
Depends. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
They followed all the rules set forth in the, have this comment read into the record.
Thank you.
This is from Joel Kahn. The subject is your vaccine mandate is a crime against humanity. Mayor Nancy Rotering, members of the Highland Park City Council. The Highland Park City Councils and the mayor's emergency declaration and mandate proof of vaccination passed at the Highland Park City Council meeting 12/29/21 are crimes against humanity because your action will cause irreversible injury and death to our children. If in support of the above assertions is attached the research of Dr. Joseph Mercola in his recently published article, More Children Die from the COVID Shot Than from COVID. To minimize the harm that you've already done, you must repeal Mayor Nancy Rotering's emergency declaration and the mandate for proof of vaccination immediately. If I can be of any assistance, please email me. And he provided his private email. So thank you, Mr. Khan, that we received your communication and read that into the record. And there are no other comments from the public at this time. And Mayor, we don't have any other staff reports at this time.
Okay, and I'll just state that Dr. Joseph Mercola has been identified as one of the top 12 sources of COVID misinformation in the nation. And I am seeking a motion to adjourn, but one question that I have, Gita, is concerning the committee of the whole meeting Joel, do we need to talk about, I guess we finish this and then we discuss not having that meeting if we're going to postpone that discussion to February 14th. When do we appropriately take that action, Corporation Counsel?
Mayor, I think you can, I mean, if no one shows up for the committee of the whole, which is technically a separate body, then nobody shows up. I think if it's the, and I think we're on the same Zoom anyway. So I think if you have consensus of your council, simply declare the committee of the whole will not meet tonight, and all matters on the agenda will be automatically continued. That would be sufficient.
Okay. Do I have consensus from this council that we continue that conversation to our next meeting?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Okay, great. Thank you all. And so to that end, I'm seeking a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call that vote?
Councilmember Tapia. Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer. Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays. We stand adjourned. Everybody stay safe, stay warm, stay healthy, and we'll see you on Valentine's Day. Thank you.